Okay, so let's move on to the assembly, and we'll make sure that we're in metric. Well, we'll bring in the parts. Let's go ahead and bring in the base. Again, if I come up to the check mark and hit OK, it's going to go right to the origin. We don't need to rotate, but I've been noticing more and more that if we use the rotation, that it's usually off of the origin some distance. So most of the time, the first piece that comes in, if it's in the right orientation, won't have to do anything. Otherwise, we right-click, we float, and then we apply the mates to get it into the orientation that we need. So we insert components. We'll bring in the screw. Not really picking up anything. This might be a good time to introduce the mate relations. Don't think we got to that one before, and so if we have, it's a review. If we haven't, we'll pick this up. Alright, so I'm going to pick the base, and under our reference geometry, the other way to get to plane is right there. And at the bottom is the mate reference. Have the face and a default and any orientation. So when I save that and go back to my assembly, the difference between this time and last time, I do the insert components, I go to bring in the screw. Notice that I call them marshmallows, but the concentric mate pops up, and when I click, that mate is going to automatically be applied. And if I want to lock the rotation, it's not going to hurt to lock the rotation here, so go ahead and accept it. We'll put that in place. And then going to make the top coincident. That brings it into to contact. Now I'd like to see what that interference is. So if I go into the section, the front plane, and go ahead and accept. All right, so there's pretty good distance here between the outside and the base, so that really wouldn't matter so much. If we look at these, we need to go back and check some numbers because those don't look like they're in alignment. And even so, the dimensions, see where, if I can determine where I made my mistake. So that would be 27.5. And that one is 21.5. So either the intent is that it doesn't go all the way, which yeah, it looks like a pretty good assumption there. So let's see, I said 27.5 to that, and the bottom was to 21.5. And instead of coincident, if I were to edit that feature, I don't have to delete it. I can switch it over to dimensions, and I didn't get that one in there, so let's go with the 2.5 millimeters, and we'll see which way it goes. Alright, so let's switch that over to millimeters, grams, and seconds. Alright, so my math, not that great. Probably needed half of that since the 5 millimeter and the difference between. So 1.25 millimeters. We'll accept it and rebuild. Oh yeah, and those weren't the same. Weren't the same on the gap to the, so we had 5 millimeters here and a 6 millimeter there. So let's use one of the other tools. I'm being overly resistant to doing the math, but if I turn on the temporary axes, I'll be able to grab and make a selection. And since I didn't see anything pop up down on the status bar, we'll go into evaluate and measure. And since, but there we go, didn't show up, we'll expand that out. Say resize it, so 2.25. And if I clear those out, I should be able to rotate over and go from the top and 2.75. So, distance, and that actually looks like it needs to move down. My initial was to put in the 1.5, but I'm still working against the math. So, all right, so we look good on the center, and we can go back up and turn off our temporary axes. Okay, and then you can see where the threads engage. And this might be a good one if we have time to go ahead and look at building the actual thread. Alright, so at this point, go to the Solidworks Add-Ins. I can turn on the toolbox, which will turn on the utilities and the toolbox. And we'll wait for it to load. Alright. And then we're looking for ANSI metric, and I want a machine screw, hex, well, let's see if we just have the hex head. Not sure how small those are going to go to, so find one with just a standard. And when I drag that in, no matching size, we'll see what the smallest one was. Well, an M5. We're called out for an M6. And length of 10 millimeters is okay, so we'll go ahead and accept that. And it was nice of it to come in already sectioned. And I'm not too worried about the rotation. We're going to have to come up with a mechanism to build that. So if I go tangent with that one, and you're going to see the interference here. So I'll come back out a little bit, and I'm going to go tangent, give it a chance to catch up. A little bit of graphics horsepower going on here. And we'll let it save. Okay, I didn't know if I was going to be in a situation where it was going to try to crash on me, so this would be a good time to save. And we'll put the assembly notation on this one. Alright, so we can see that that is going to contact and not work too well for our, if we really are going to use that as an alignment. The other thing is that we might customize one of these, or these screws to have a little bit of a setback relief so that it's not really riding on the thread. There's a little bit of a post that goes in there, but that would be a that would turn it into a purchased part, modified and customized for the application. All right, so that'll show you the interferences, and then we'll turn off the section view. Now, what I might need is if we did a display state, I could have the default display state. If I add another one, and maybe these are the transparent, then when I click and go to transparency, that will show us the interior, and I can switch back pretty easily. I could also set up a configuration that would be a half view. And within the assembly, we do have the ability, go into the top plane, I'll open up a sketch, and draw a line from quadrant to quadrant. And one of those picked up. and coincident or midpoint will get it in there. So, alright, so under the assembly, I want to create an assembly feature, and this is going to be an extrude cut. We need to reverse the direction. Interesting that it's picked the downward view. We don't often get well, since this is an open profile, we'll go through both, and then if I flip the side to cut, that's going to remove it just to that side. Alright, so we have transparent, and on the display state, so here's where the display states are independent, and I can verify that by going into properties. They're not linked to the configuration. So if I switch the display state, it's going to act like that section view, except it's not going to do all the components. And then when I go back to the default, the cut extrude for the assembly was suppressed, and allows it to show it in its standard form. Alright, so let's take a quick look at the threads. So at this point we added our cosmetic thread. If I want to, just right click and hide under the hole wizard, then we have a thread tool. I also have videos for the swept cut to make custom or have a little bit more control over it. I hate that it goes right to the odd 80s, because depending on the size of the thing, that can get pretty intense. So the inch, we're going to switch over to a metric die. So the tap makes the interior, die makes the exterior, or we do single point threading on a lathe. And this we said was an M20 by 2. Alright, so that looks a little bit better. And now I can work on the end condition without it getting too crazy. So if I gave this a up to selection, maybe we'll stop it a little bit past. Now it's going to cut in. So let's make sure the face is highlighted in blue, and I'll bring it up to that face, and it makes one revolution past. So what that doesn't do is, if I look at the bottom, we're kind of having a terminating feature. So I need to offset this and reverse the direction. And we had 3 millimeters on the chamfer, so that'll give it enough that the thread starts in space and it ends in space. Alright, so in effect, we just probably made this part 3 or 4 times larger on the file size. And the recommendation is that if it adds value to your model, if there's something usable with it, for interference or build, then we go ahead and put those threads in. So if I go back to the half view, I'm going to be able to see the engagement. Could put the same threads on the interior if we needed it.